Hey, Jamie. Good evening. Welcome to
Hey, Ted.
Paranormal Lens. Changing it up a little bit tonight.
I feel like I should be waving a flag at this point. I don't know. Saluting somebody.
Did you stand up? No, it's not the national anthem, but
Nope.
Anyway, anyway.
Oh my
So how you
gosh.
been, Jamie?
Hey, I'm great. I'm great. Nothing to complain about. It's been a week. It's funny how
It
time
has.
flies between these episodes. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lifetime
Mm-hmm.
flies by, and
Yep.
here we are again. So
Mm.
no
Yep.
complaints. What's going on with you?
Well, since the last time I took a visit to State College, Pennsylvania, for taking a kid to a college visit. That was
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Can't believe
Saw
we're
some
looking at
pictures.
that already. So
So
yeah.
you did the
So
obligatory picture in front of the lion. Saw that,
well, I made her do the obligatory
right?
picture in
Well,
front of
you
the
being her, right?
Yep,
And then
yep,
the obvious stop at the creamery as well. So
exactly, yep. So,
good stuff.
yeah, so it's been a good week. So
Good.
lots going on, definitely, that's for sure. So, so anyway, we're here to
Yeah.
talk about the White House. Yesterday was President's Day, so I figured why not do an episode on presidents that might still be haunting the White House? So
What
here we are.
relative topics? What?
I try every now and then. Um, so yeah, let's jump right into it. Um, and I may ask you to do some slides, but
Okay.
goes to the White House. Let's take a quick look at the history of the building. President George Washington selected for the site for the White House in 1791. Um, the history on the land itself could take hours to go through, so I'm going to quote from the website whitehousehistory.org. The White House is often called the people's house, so it's important to acknowledge all the people that used the land throughout thousands of years of human history. From early indigenous people, um, sorry, from early indigenous peoples to the Nakatanks to the enslaved individuals forced to harvest tobacco from its fields, the land upon which the White House is built has many stories to tell. Perhaps additional archaeological research could bring to light more information about the indigenous and enslaved people that once called it home. So, if you're interested in the history of the land, check out that website. It goes into immense detail. Um, The land that the building was constructed on was purchased from Mr. Burns. Here's another quote from the same website. The Mr. Burns in question was particularly stubborn, Scottish planter by the name of David Burns, who happened to own the land Washington envisioned as the future site for the president's house. Although other planners were excited about the prospect of a capital city, Burns was primarily concerned with getting as much money out of the negotiations as possible. At first, he stubbornly refused to sell, and then, even after agreeing to sell, gave more demands to the president and the appointed commissioners of the District of Columbia responsible for constructing the new city. We'll come back to Mr. Burns in a while.
Wait. Well, excellent.
There you go. There you go.
Can't help it.
Um, let's see. In 1792, the cornerstone was laid for the president's house. An Irish architect named James Hoban was chosen from multiple entries to design and oversee the building. 8 years later, after being worked on by enslaved people on loan from local plantations and over 100 skilled tradesmen, um, President John Adams moved into the unfinished building in November of 1800. Ironically, President Washington never got a chance to stay in the building as he passed away in 1799. At this point, the building was known as the President's Palace or the Executive Mansion. It was not known as the White House until Theodore Roosevelt gave it that name during his term. Abigail Adams occupied the house later in November of 1800. Her President Adams moved in. She followed about 3 weeks later. Um, when she moved in, the building was still under construction. There were construction workers finishing details. The large rooms were unfinished and cold. The fireplaces did little to warm the rooms. Mrs. Adams was known to use the East Room to wash and hang her laundry. The Adams only resided in the house for 1 year, but for many years, people would see a translucent woman hanging laundry in the East Room Others have been known to notice the light smell of laundry, soap, and lavender in the air. So that's sort of the going in timelines here. I sort of tried to keep it in the order of people who occupied the house, not when the ghosts were seen. Jumping to the next slide here. In 1814, the Madisons occupied the executive mansion while the country was involved in the War of 1812. On August 24th, 1814, President Madison was out visiting troops. While the British stormed Washington, D.C., Mrs. Madison, expecting the president, his cabinet, and military staff to return, had prepared a large feast. The table was set and the food ready to be eaten. Unfortunately, the feast never happened. Before James Madison returned, Dolly and the staff were forced to retreat from the mansion. The British were storming through the city, burning any public building they came to. They stopped at the presidential residence long enough to eat the feast before setting fire to the structure. When the British left D.C., the only thing that was left of the executive mansion were the 3-foot thick stone walls. Now, these walls were built this way, and they were meant to stand up to a cannon fire, but they weren't meant to be burned from within. So the walls were cracked and crumbled. The interior was all ash. President Madison decided that everything should be rebuilt the way it was, if not better, because he didn't want the British to think they had won. James Hoban was brought back in to oversee the minor repairs that the public was told the building needed. At this point, the north and south porticos were added, while tremendous work was done to restore the building and make it better than before. You want to jump to the next slide? There are 2 areas that are kept unpainted to this day to show some of the scarring from that time. It's just a way to remind us of our past. Now I'm going to sidestep a little bit right here because one of our normal guests, Heather Lynch, sent me a message a little bit before we went on the air and said that she is related to Dolly Madison, and that there were most of what was inside was destroyed, but Dolly and her staff managed to get the original portrait of George Washington, an original copy of the Constitution, and several other historic artifacts out before the building was burned. So at least they had the foresight to grab some important parts of our history. Again, it's glad I'm glad that got preserved. So,
yeah.
So thanks, Heather, for the side note on that too. I appreciate it. Let's see. Tied to the building, the burning of the building, is a story of the ghost of a British soldier who wanders the grounds near the north portico. Apparition is believed to have been seen either carrying a lantern or a torch. It's almost like he's out looking for the rest of his platoon. This may be more of a story of folklore than documented paranormal activity, though. But we know folklore, ghost stories go hand in hand. So if you want to go to the next slide, we're going to jump to Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was known to be the common man's president. He didn't like career politicians and liked to have his things done his way. He was known to have a good sense of humor, but also a short temper. While serving as First Lady, Mary Todd Lincoln believed that she heard Andrew Jackson cursing, swearing, and stomping around in what was the Rose Guest Room, now known as the Queen's Room. There have also been reports of Jackson being seen lying in the bed of this room. There are other reports of hearing a guttural laugh, and that goes back to the 1860s. This laugh has been heard specifically in the Red Room, which would have been the former president's bedroom. So, now sort of getting into more of these stories, it's intriguing what each person brings to the building. Let's see. Next slide.
Before you go on, so just with Andrew Jackson, he has a keen interest in the paranormal as well.
Okay.
If we go way back to a previous episode around the Bell Witch, it's noted that Andrew Jackson came to visit the Bells in order to understand what was happening at their homestead, because he had an interest and wanted to see it for himself. So he spent a week or so at the the Bell homestead out there in Tennessee. So quite interesting.
Yeah,
Or
that is
Kentucky. I'm
cool.
sorry, it's in Kentucky. My pardon. So our guy wouldn't be surprised if he's haunting us.
Uh-huh. Go ahead and jump to the next slide, Jamie. President to die in the White House. His inauguration was outside on a cold Washington day. President Harrison refused to wear a coat or a hat to the ceremony. He quickly came down with a cold that developed into pneumonia. He died 1 month later in his bedroom of the building. His spirit has been seen in the attic rummaging through boxes looking for something. Now, an interesting note about Harrison: he had the
Could it be a
shortest
hat?
tenure. What's that? What's
Still
that,
looking
Jamie?
for a hat?
Maybe. He had the shortest tenure as president, but he had the longest inaugural speech. It went over. It was like an hour and 15 or an hour and 20 minutes.
Wow.
So should have wore a hat.
So should wear a hat.
All right, good. Let's jump to the next slide. We're going to transition into Lincoln's here, and here is where the story really gets interesting. Lincoln's had a lot of things that they contributed. So during the Lincoln presidency, Willie Lincoln, the youngest son of the family, passed away from a typhoid type disease in his bedroom. Willie's funeral was held in the East Room while his body lay in the Green Room. President Lincoln wanted to have his son buried in the family plot in Springfield, Illinois, but he didn't want to be that far away from him while he was president. A friend of the president allowed Willie to be placed in his family's above ground tomb and then moved to Springfield at a later date. President Lincoln was known to visit on several occasions and open the casket to see his young son's face. It was Mary Todd Lincoln who is believed to have seen the first ghost in the building. She wrote to her sister and described seeing Willie come to the foot of her bed at night, not just one night, but multiple nights throughout her stay there, sometimes alone, but also accompanied by a cousin or his Uncle Albert. It could be dismissed as a grieving mother yearning to see her son in a dream, but Mary Todd Lincoln was not the only one to encounter the young boy. In 1911, Archibald Butt, a military aide, documented a conversation he had with a housekeeper. It seems that the staff would feel the presence of the boy and could be scared by the experience. So they felt that presence, and there are some who actually claim to have been touched by him. So, again, it's interesting that people are starting to document things and write it down here. Mary Lincoln had other experiences as well. During the spring of 1862, she heard violin music coming from the yellow oval room. No one in the room was playing an instrument, and no source for the music could be found. She believed that it was Thomas Jefferson. A few days later, she witnessed John Tyler proposing to Julia Gardner. President Tyler had proposed to Julia in that room 2 decades earlier after his first wife had died. So, several things start happening in this room as well. Mary Todd Lincoln hosted seances while her husband was president. President Lincoln is believed to have attended one, but then was advised not to attend because it may not look good in the eyes of the American people. So Mary Todd Lincoln is believed to have had some psychic abilities. President Lincoln had his own intuition. In 1860, shortly after being elected, now this was before he moved into the White House, this was back in Springfield, Lincoln was resting on a lounge chair in his room. He glanced at the swinging glass mirror on the bureau. In the reflection, he saw his face twice. The noses were about 3 inches apart. One image was about 5 shades lighter than the other. He looked away and back, and it was still there. He got up to walk towards it, and it melted away. A few days later, he tried again and was able to see the apparition a second time. But this was the last time he would see that particular phenomenon. Mary Todd Lincoln believed it was a premonition that he would be elected to a second term, but would not see the end of his second term. Lincoln had a second premonition about his assassination. This account was written by his bodyguard after he had talked to Mary Todd and the bodyguard about it. So I'm quoting from the bodyguard's book here. About 10 years ago, he said, I retired very late. I had been up waiting for important dispatches from the front. I could not have been long in bed when I fell into a slumber, for I was weary. I soon began to dream. There seemed to be a death-like stillness about me. Then I heard subdued sobs, as if a number of people were weeping. I were weeping. I thought. I left my bed and wandered downstairs. There, the silence was broken by the same pitiful sobbing, but the mourners were invisible. I went from room to room. No living person was in sight, but the same mournful sound of distress met me as I passed along. It was light in all the rooms. Every object was familiar to me, but where were all the people who were grieving as if their hearts would break? I was puzzled and alarmed. What could be the meaning of all this? Determined to find the cause of the state of things, so mysterious and so shocking, I kept on until arrived at the East Room, which I entered. There I met with a sickening surprise. Before me was a catafalque, on which rested a corpse wrapped in funeral vestments. Around it were stationed soldiers who were acting as guards, and there was a throng of people, some gazing mournfully upon the corpse, whose face was covered, others weeping pitifully. Who is dead in the White House? I demanded of one of the soldiers. The president, was his answer. He was killed by an assassin. Then came a loud burst of grief from the crowd, which awoke me from my dream. I slept no more that night, and although it was only a dream, I have been strangely annoyed ever since. So I find it interesting that both Lincolns seem to have this ability of premonition and psychic ability. So let's jump to the next slide. Remember Mr. Burns that I mentioned earlier? A valet to Franklin Delano Roosevelt named Caesar Carrera heard someone calling him in a strange, far-off voice in the Yellow Room. The voice identified himself as Mr. Burns, but when Caesar reached the room, he found that it was empty. It was not until later that Caesar found out that the previous landowner was David Burns. On another occasion, a security guard under President Truman's administration heard a voice from upstairs call out, "I'm Mr. Burns." The guard assumed that this was the Secretary of State, James Burns, but upon investigation, he found the room empty. Further investigation showed that James Burns had not visited the White House that day. There are also non-human ghosts that have been seen in the White House. In the basement, several times before a national crisis, a black cat has been seen lurking in the halls. This has happened just before presidential assassination and the crash of the stock market. Animals have also seen things that their owners could not. President Reagan said that his dog Rex would go down the hall leading to the Lincoln bedroom and would stop at the door and bark and glare at the door, but the room was always empty. Come to the next slide. So this is a shot of the Lincoln bedroom. President Reagan's daughter, Maureen, would see orange and red auras while sleeping in the Lincoln bedroom. Dennis Freemeyer, a deputy White House usher, also had a strange experience in the Lincoln bedroom during the Reagan administration. He was filling in for the person who shuts down the residence for the night. He was turning lights off at the first family's request. He turned the chandelier off in the Lincoln bedroom via a rheostat switch, went across the hall and turned off the lights in the Queen's room, turned around and was looking into the Lincoln bedroom when the chandelier turned back on. He rushed into the room hoping to experience something paranormal. Sounds like one of our friends.
Sounds like one of us. What are you saying?
Well, exactly. But he didn't see anything, but he said he felt a cold presence fill the room. It was the one and only experience he had in his 25 years of working at the White House. Other accounts of the Lincoln bedroom include a stay by Sir Winston Churchill. He was staying at that White House for several weeks during World War II to meet with President Roosevelt. The Lincoln Room was the most prestigious guest room in the White House. It has the original furniture from when the Lincolns resided there. So Churchill was given that room to use. He slept in the room for one night. He refused to go back in it, saying that it felt haunted. Another story, true or not, has been handed down about a time when Queen Helmina of the Netherlands was a guest at the White House. She was awakened one night by a knock on her bedroom door. Thinking it might be an important message, she got up and opened the door. The top-hatted figure of President Lincoln stood in the hall. The Queen fainted. When she came to, she was lying on the floor. The apparition had vanished. Let's see. Tony Savoy, White House operations foreman in the early 1980s, recounted his brush with President Lincoln. And I'm quoting from his text that's on the White House website. It was early one morning, and I was taking care of the plants up on the second floor. I used to come in early in the morning and turn the lights on and walk down the hall in the dark. When I turned the light on one morning, he was sitting there outside his office, with hands over top of each other, legs crossed, and was looking straight ahead. He had gray, charcoal-colored pinstripe suit on and had a pair of 3-button spats turned on the side with black shoes on. He was sitting there, and he startled me, and I stopped. And when I blinked, he was gone. I left there and went downstairs and told assistant usher Nelson Pierce what I had seen, and he said it's just one of the other ones that had seen him through the house over the years. So it is believed that Lincoln is the most cited spirit in the White House. We can come back to that when we get into our discussion. Can you jump into the next slide?
Before we go, there's a comment here. What do you see?
Okay.
So might be something there to look into.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Okay, next slide.
Okay. So jumping back in history, Dolly Madison planted a colonial garden at the White House in 1809. In 1913, when the city beautification movement was sweeping through Washington, D.C., and the Wilsons were in the White House, Ellen Wilson wanted to make her mark. She worked with the noted landscape architect George Burnap to design a modern rose garden to replace the colonial garden. When the gardeners approached the west side of the White House to start their work, they froze. Above the garden, they saw a ghostly apparition with curly dark hair surrounding a pale white face. The face had a disapproving look. Her hands were on her hips until she raised one hand and wagged a finger at them. They immediately dropped their tools and ran. After researching who the woman might be, they discovered that it had been Dolly Madison. Apparently, she wanted one more stroll through her colonial garden. Let's see. Harry Truman is another president that witnessed spirits at the White House. He actually was very good about documenting things in his diary. On September 7th, 1946, night before last, I went to bed at 9 p.m. after shutting my doors. At 4 a.m., I was awakened by 3 distinct knocks on my bedroom door. I jumped up, put on my bedroom, and no one was there. Went out, looking up and down the hall, still no one. Damn place is sure is shooting. So he told it how it was. So we've covered several sightings. I'm sure there are many more. The Clintons, Bushes, and Obama family members have all made mention of ghostly things that have happened here. Current presidents try not to say too much about the activity so they don't look crazy in the eyes of their constituents. So let's jump to the last slide here. So I want to leave you with this little tidbit. In 1948, the White House was in bad shape. The first family was moved out, the building gutted, and the old wooden beams were replaced by steel. A picture taken by Abby Rowe, a White House photographer, has a curious anomaly. If you look very carefully at the close-up, sort of in at the base of the back wall, there's a dark human shape that you can see through. Do you see where that is, Jamie?
Yep.
You got the 2 people to the left, but then sort of to the right of them, there's that dark shape.
Under the double window. Yeah.
Yeah. So is it paranormal? What are your thoughts?
It's possible. I mean, unfortunately, I need to get a much bigger picture here, but it certainly looks like he's blending in, at least to the background, especially with that stripe that's about shoulder high. I feel like that continues through. So it's.
And I mean, this has been argued for years. Obviously, it goes quite a ways back. But I mean, apparently the building was in such bad shape that if somebody that was heavy walked through you could actually see the floor sag as they walked. So that's why they gutted it and put in the steel beams.
Right.
Um, so what do you think? I mean,
Well, overall or the image? I mean, overall,
yeah,
I'll go.
overall,
I'll go big. I'll go big.
yeah,
Right? Why not?
yep,
Um, there's a lot of history here. Right? It's an
hmm
old house, and we've been in houses that aren't this old that are very active. So, and it hasn't been nearly as occupied by so many different people as far as households that live there, but also the staff and the personnel that come through the place every day. Uh, there's a sense of purpose and patriotism to be at the White House. I mean, unfortunately I've never been
right,
able to get the tour. It's too early for me when we visit DC to get the clan together to go, but
hmm
get up and out that early. But I have a friend who was there recently, and he just explained the overwhelming sense of it. Like just so much history is there and so many things. And if you fall into that mindset, that thought process, if that's your thing, that's I can see that there would be somebody who'd want to stay there, once they passed. So,
right,
um, and obviously, there's with Lincoln, being assassinated, he didn't plan to end that day. He had some unfinished business to do, so there's a lot going on. So I can see why he would linger. Um, and then
well,
people go back to the place they liked, and not every, that's why ghosts don't haunt graveyards, right? Um,
right.
you know, so I'm sure that the house meant something, to people who are still there.
Well, going back to Lincoln,
Yeah,
not only was it the fact that he died there, or not, well, he didn't die there. He
right.
was shot at Ford Theater and was across the street, but what he was going through in that building,
Mhm.
the amount of emotion that he put out, it's energy again, and that energy was absorbed, and it just he dealt with so much in his tenure there. So,
Well, I'm going back to being a kid myself. So, and it was just a long time ago, but
mhm,
you were told that if you did all these, did all the things, you could be president one day. That dream
mhm,
is instilled in many, still today, in many kids. You can do anything if you want to achieve it. You know,
mhm,
so getting there and being president. I mean, to probably to the early, founding fathers, it probably after realizing how much work it was, probably wasn't the best thing. But you know, there was a
right,
reason people aspire to this position, and
right,
it's an achievement. And I guess there, I can understand that alone. Having that just I got there moment.
right.
And wanting to stay because of it. There's so many things. I mean, obviously I'm speculating, but um, I can see that being a part of it too. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, if anybody can figure out how to get an invitation to investigate the White House, let me know. I'd be happy to come and help you out.
yeah, yeah. I'll drive. Uh,
So, um,
it's a neat thing. It's a neat topic, and it goes to show, you know, uh, we have the privilege, I guess I'll say, of living on the East Coast, so we have a lot of more history, um, at least colonial history and beyond. For us, um, that there are so many places, and this just, I mean, I'm not trying to put cold water on this, but it's one of many,
right.
places that are active or have potential to be active. It's a high profile place, right? And that makes
Mhm.
it be more interesting to some. But I would bet you can't. Well, like, you can't throw a stone and not hit something because of where the building is located. But you go a half a mile in any direction in DC, you're going to find buildings just as old with just as much opportunity in them. It's
Right.
it's just so cool, and then we can walk up and down the East Coast and do the same thing in so
Hmm.
many places. Not to disparage anywhere else in the country or
Right.
anywhere else in the
Well,
world
I
for that
mean,
matter.
I told you before about the the Capitol building in Richmond, how they
Right.
have 3 filing cabinets full of
Cool.
unsolved
The police down
paranormal.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder what the Capitol Police have. Wow.
Yeah. Who
Yeah,
knows?
what if that's a one of the the right to know requests? Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. Well, whenever one of us has that much time that we can do that,
Well, I
right?
do have a friend who at one point worked for the Capitol Police and was fairly high up in there. So I may have to.
Well, there you go.
He was a high school acquaintance, so not not necessarily friend, but I could reach out.
In times like this, it's your best friend. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just
But if we go, we got a deal here. So
yeah, I saw yeah, um, and like I just scratched the surface. There are so many stories of so many and like you said, imagine all the staff that has been there over the years,
yeah,
and those are the people who are going to see it because they're there day in and day out,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you know a president's there for 8 years, but these staff members there are 25, 50 years sometimes,
Right.
and so they know the building.
Well, this is the other side. We were chatting before we came on about this a little bit, so I'm going to bring that in. But we not everybody believes in the paranormal, first of all, right? And even though an experience may happen to them, they may brush it away. Like they're just a no, 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 no. Just blinders,
Right.
regardless. So that automatically is not reported unless it's required to be, like, for some protocol. And then you get those who don't want to be the one to report it, right? Because they come with questions, or they stay under the radar. Um,
Right.
so I would have to think that there is some escalated percentage there of those kind of opportunities that just go undocumented. And you can't, in this time that we have here, we can't bring everything about everything we talk about. It's just sometimes there's just too much. And
Right.
in that sense too, like, I'm sure there's just more history of the place that we're not going to talk about because, we don't want to talk for 3 hours or 4
Right.
hours or whatever, because we could. And, I'm sure somebody would hang in with us,
I don't
I
know if
don't
I'd
think
hang
I
in with
would.
you.
Yeah. I don't think I would be able to. So, it's hard sometimes to get the right balance here. And that's the challenge, right?
Right.
And it's a good challenge because I think, I like to think we have fun with it, and we do. I like to think we do a good job, but with good intentions anyway,
Hmm.
of providing, the key things that are needed to know. But once we start digging, though, we keep finding stuff, and
Right.
we find stuff, and that's the excitement.
Well,
And you
yeah,
got to end it somewhere, just like my conversation right now, right? Can't stop talking.
with the White House, originally it was the single structure, but now they've added the West Wing and the East.
Right.
Like the president's residence is now the whole separate wing, but it used to be all contained in that center section.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's they're like I said, I could have gone on hours on just the land development, and then the history of the building itself. Not even yeah. Anyway, time
Absolutely.
to move on.
And it's native land to begin with, right?
Hmm.
So there's a different connection there, and
And very
the
active native land because of
right,
the rivers and the portage there, and just yeah.
and it's interesting because it was swampland to some degree, and that was not going to get to be developed at the from the traditional sense. So getting this building there was somewhat of an architectural, some architectural ingenuity went into it.
Hmm.
So all the laborers and all of the craftsmen and all the tradesmen that also were there that aren't, that put their time, effort, energies all into the place, much less the architectural team, but the physical people, who built the building and rebuilt it later.
Right.
There's a lot of that just all these different angles that you can take to follow paths that will take us forever to get through all of them.
Yeah.
So
Can
cool.
you imagine being John and Abigail Adams and be required to move into this building, and the plaster is still wet when you moved in? The grand staircase wasn't done. Like
Yeah,
it
I
was
mean,
cold. It was not a welcoming building when they had to move into this place. So
it kind of makes me think of, there's an old Tom Hanks movie called The Money Pit, and
yep.
they buy this house. He and Shelley Long buy this house, and it is kind of, well, it is a money pit. It's falling apart in places. It's kind of half done. The scene I remember the most is they have to carry hot water up from the kitchen to the bathtub. And as he fills it for her to take a bath, as he puts the last bucket in, the whole thing collapses through the floor.
Mm-hmm.
He just stands there
Yep.
and laughs at it because what can you do, right? So,
Right.
But that kind of thing, like, they didn't have, and everything was hand done, right? So there wasn't prefabricated this or that. They couldn't go to Lowe's or Home Depot and get a bucket of this or a pallet of that. Everything was just slow and tedious. And I get it. I wouldn't want to live there either, especially if it was winter months and cold and drafty.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And there's fireplaces in each room, but like they're big rooms. They're 20-foot ceilings and like they're huge. So Todd brings up wonder if any of the Masonic ties enhance paranormal activity in DC. Good question.
It's a very good question. Who do we know?
We haven't even I don't know. We haven't delved into anything Masonic at all yet, Jamie.
I know it's in the back of my mind. It's just so big, big a topic. How do you, it's like, well, how do you eat the elephant, right? By the time, but
right.
that is it's crossed my mind a few times in looking ahead. So, yeah. Who do we know who's a Mason? Just start there.
True.
All right. Thank you, Todd. That's
apparently. Yeah.
Oh, the Money Pit. Yes. I haven't seen it a lot to rewatch it.
I don't know. You and I, like, I remember when it came out. Amanda, I feel like you're a little younger than that, so you're watching classics. So.
That's one of those Saturday afternoon movies when it's snow day or something.
So any other thoughts on this? I mean, like, it's such a big building. I would love to go investigate, but
well, just a tour. I'd like to start there, and we see glimpses, of things. There it is. This. Me too, my friend. Me too. So I appreciate that. I think just to be able to get the tour, and get eyes on and just to walk it, and it's like any of the places, we talk about when we were at West Virginia Penitentiary, we had the luxury, if you will, of doing the tour in the afternoon before that night. It just helps you get the lay of the land, and really understand it. Everything changes in the dark, right? Your bearings are different, the visuals are different. You don't want to have a bunch of lights shining around. Obviously, ruins your night vision. And
you run over your leader if you're not
run over people when you hear something clang in a kitchen. It never gets old. It never ever gets old. But it's different, and I think from the history perspective, you get a better sense of it, and scale and scope and all that stuff when you see it in the daytime, if you can, anyway. So I'd just like to take the tour.
Yeah. Maybe I can talk Zoe into doing a college visit to DC, and they'd have to be there early in the day.
Yeah, or we have to stay over because it's so far away.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the gift shop and buy a copy of the Constitution with my credit card so I can be tracked just like Nicolas Cage.
Okay.
All right. That was the archives, so it wasn't. Never mind. Different thing.
Anyway, somewhere.
Another fun movie for another time. All right. Well, yeah, Chad, great topic. I think we could as a sense of exploration, there's a lot of stuff here that could have a revisit episode at some point and really dig deeper. Thank you. All right, sir. What else we got?
Well, we got. You know what? Hey, you know what we have this weekend, Jamie? We have an investigation.
We have to go to work this weekend.
We do. It's been like months since I've seen the team together.
I know.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, we had a group chat going around earlier today, and I was like, "Who are these people?" I'm kidding, of course.
So, Yeah,
I'm
I
so
mean,
excited.
we're back. It is sold out,
Yeah.
but I'm excited to get back to it. Be interesting to see what we pick up since there's not really been anybody investigating for a little
Yeah.
while. Eloise may be a little upset that nobody's been talking to him.
You might have a lot to say. Yep.
So we'll see. And I did look earlier. Tickets for the 30th of March and 13th of April are starting to sell. There's already like 10 tickets sold for each one of those, if not more.
Okay.
So if people are interested, they should get them early.
Just a
Um,
reminder, we have about a 30-person cap on the events. So as far as online sales, so obviously there's still tickets, but as we get closer and closer, they're going to start to go. So if you're interested in coming and joining us at the brewery, don't wait. Unfortunately, it may be gone, and we have to wait till the next time. So, and then of course, remember you can always stay over as well as part of the accommodations. There's a 10 rooms, single occupancy rooms upstairs in the hotel level. So that's part of the opportunity there too. So come
and
hang out, stay for the night.
yeah, and we'll get to see Heather and Bert this weekend
Yeah,
because they're
it's
coming
been
out.
forever.
So yeah, we've got that. Then we got stuff coming up. Shows. You're doing a show next week, Jamie.
I am.
I hope so, because I don't know how to say that word. We know that.
Wendigo. So and I'm really excited because the more and more I keep doing on this, I keep coming across more cool stuff. So,
Are you up to like 3 hours now? Is that what you told me?
I think we're going into a fourth at this point. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Obviously I talk too much to begin with, so that's why I'm here, because I talk all the time. And part of, and I talked about this last week and probably the week before and the week before, but as you start doing research on things, you come across material, and I came across this cool book. It is a British author named Algernon Blackwood, but he spent a lot of time in Eastern Canada and northern the United States, and he had some experiences that he translated into this really short 100-page novella called Wendigo, the Wendigo. So it's not what the whole story is based on, but it's a fun segue. So I found all kinds of, excuse my expression, as I found all kinds of cool shit. So let's come back to that.
Cool.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. I'm really excited.
And then the week after that, we're going to talk about Phelps Dodge Mining Hospital and Staticom 2. Really looking forward to talking. I know Tony's coming. I think Cherie, but I'm going to confirm this week and find out if they're both going to make it and get more information from them. And then you're digging into Fort Mifflin, which you said their season is starting.
Starts March 1st. So they are down for the winter currently, but back on March 1st through the middle of December, I believe. So we give everybody a good reason to come and visit them after we learn a little bit about them.
Mm-hmm. So, and you said maybe we can do a field trip to get some pictures, right?
Yeah. Hey, well, and Amanda's buying snacks when we take road trips, so let's pile in. And this is the beauty of where we live, right? We're in South Central Pennsylvania, for those who don't know us, and that's our home base for Jott-Nyx Paranormal as well. But we're never that far from anywhere. And we can be in New York in 3 hours. We can be in Washington, D.C. in 3 hours, Philly in an hour and a half-ish, Baltimore, Pittsburgh in 3.5, 3, 4. Depends how fast you drive. Right. And all the stuff in between here, at least in the mid-state area. And it's just amazing. There's so much around us that we're never going to be tired or bored of paranormal research and things to explore. We'll let you know. Don't worry.
I mean, yeah, you guys aren't far from there, right, Amanda? I think you're fairly close, like unless my geography is wrong. But anyway, then the week after that, I'm going to dig into telekinesis. It's not working right now, but we'll see.
All right, we got to get you a Professor X hat helmet thing. And
all
right. So this is gonna be fun. We got a lot of good stuff lined up.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah. Any last minute thoughts, Jamie? Oh,
man.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Well, if we do, we'll reach out. It'd be great to meet you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. The again, the cool thing is we're never that far from somewhere, and even for us, it's probably the same distance to get to like Whitehill as it is to Fort Mifflin. It's like an hour and a half ish, easy in, easy out. Those kind of things don't make me think twice about going to an investigation. It's the 4-hour one-way drive.
Yeah.
Hinsdale all over again. Driving up and driving back in the same day. That was just so bad.
Well, you're in your castle in Vermont. That's a hike.
Well, yeah, that one's not that's not an overnight drive or coming back. But Wilson is on the list, so we'll get there. And then hopefully we'll see Champ while we're up there and everybody wins.
So I guess the last thing is, our social media stuff. We just throw it out there every time. Check us out. Yeah. Hinsdale in one day. I didn't do that. Jamie, you and Matt did that, right?
Matt and I did it. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Or you did it with Matt in the car, maybe.
I drove and Matt slept basically. No, he was up. He was awake on the way up and on the way back. Yeah. This is when I have heated seats and I kept messing with him every time he fell asleep. I turned it on and he'd wake up and I thought I turned that off. Did it again. It was the foggiest, darkest night ever too, driving back. So anyway, story for another time.
Tough. So
interesting night though.
All right. Yeah. So
the usual socials. Like us, drop us a line. We're still the invitation is still here for topics for upcoming episodes. A few things have drifted in. Ley lines was one that Bert wanted to explore. We didn't know that Heather was related to the Madisons until an hour ago. So there's all kinds of cool stuff. So if there's anything that's on your mind or anything that you think is interesting, drop us a note. And we'll get it on the list and get to it. So not a problem there. Happy to.
Yeah, we're coming to the end of the ones we've got scheduled, Jamie. We got to get that list filled out a little bit.
Sure, we gotta revisit the list. I tend to go about 6 weeks out just to that way I have something to focus on. But yeah, we can definitely line up a lot more. This was episode 43.
43.
3. Okay, the time is covering over the episode title at the top for me. But so we've managed to babble this many times, so we can certainly do more. So line them up, we'll knock them down.
So, well, on that note, just want to thank everybody for coming out and hanging out with us for a little less than an hour. I appreciate it. Drop us a line, let us know what's on your mind. You can do it through the Jott-Nyx site. If you have our email us directly. Facebook. All those things. So, All right.
Warrior Pigeon still works.
Yeah.
If you're into owls,
send that to Jamie's house so I don't have to deal with cleaning up after him.
True.
Yeah. So anyway, Jamie, I will see you Saturday night. And with we got a full house. It's a bunch of people, and I'm looking forward to it. So
let's get it.
So, all right.
Well, thank you.
On that note, we are going to wrap it up, and we will see everybody here in a week if we don't see you on Saturday. Good night.
Good night all.